Hi there, my name is Delani Gunasekara, and I will be talking about a major world religion called Buddhism. So, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not new, I post K-pop content, but for today, I'm doing a major world religions project for my professor. So, without further ado, let's get started and talk about the philosophies of Buddhism. So, what is Buddhism? Do you think it's a religion or do you think it's a philosophy? Well, actually, it's neither. I know, right? Crazy. Yeah, it's a practice for spiritual development, and we have many meditation techniques that we practice, such as breathing, mindfulness, and loving kindness. Okay, now, does Buddhism have like a central god that they believe in, like Christianity or Islam, or do they believe and worship in many deities like Hinduism? So, to answer that question, Buddhism does not centralize around one god, but we do respect the Buddha as a spiritual teacher. Now, has anyone here have heard of the Pali Canon? If you're not, don't worry about it. I'm here to tell you about it. So, the Pali Canon consists of a wide range of sutras, pittas, and gathas. And it includes a lot of miscellaneous texts, such as the Dhammapada, which is the Buddhist path to wisdom. Now, in the Pali Canon, it is divided into three sections or three baskets. They are known as Vinaya, Sutra, and Abhidhamma. Vinaya consists of a set of rules that all monks and bhikkhunis or nuns have to follow. And there are a total of 227 rules. That's a lot. Abhidhamma. Have you ever heard of it before? No? Yeah, it's not very commonly familiarized with much of the common people, but in Buddhism, it's highly respected. Abhidhamma serves as the higher teachings of the Buddha, and it contains a very deep, knowledgeable pattern. So, only if you're worth going the extra mile. Lastly, I know I did kind of Vinaya, Abhidhamma, and Sutra, but I want to leave Sutra for last. Now, Sutra is what consists of 5 different subsections, and in these subsections, they're called Nikayas. Nikayas are comprised more as volumes, and the Nikayas names that I will be sending is Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, and Khuddaka Nikaya. Alright, so I know I dropped the bomb of unknown strange words that you may have never heard, but don't worry, I will break it down for you. So, Digha Nikaya translates to the long discourses, and it contains about 34 sutras or discourses. Majjhima Nikaya is translated as the middle-length discourses and consists of 152 sutras. Samyutta Nikaya translates to group discourses, and in here it contains about 2,800 sutras, but they're relatively short. Anguttara Nikaya has about several thousand short sutras, but they're not too long. And Khuddaka Nikaya translates as the division of short books, and this is where all the miscellaneous texts are located, such as the Dhammapada. So now I have given you a little background of what is Buddhism. I hope it really helped. But now we're gonna get into the good stuff. Alright, let's move on. Since you got a good background of what Buddhism is about, now it's time to talk about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra. You should know that this is the first sermon that the Buddha has delivered after attaining enlightenment under the Asattu Bodhi tree. Now, in Pali, it's known as Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, but in English, it means setting the wheel in motion. Dhammacakka means the wheel of Dhamma, and in Buddhism, it's used to identify as the symbolization of Buddhism. In this wheel, we have 8 spokes, which represents each of the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, if you think about it, the wheel is a circle, right? So it goes endlessly and endlessly, which means there is an endless cycle of rebirth, and this is called Sansara. This sutra was delivered in a city called Isipatana, Benares, specifically in the Deer Park. And this sutra mainly focuses on these highlights: the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and 6 heavenly realms. So, during the time that the Buddha delivered his sermon, 5 of his friends were present. Their names are Kondanya, Wappa, Manama, Bhattya, and Asati. So, something you should also know that's very historical is that the Chatumarajika Devas from the Devaloka came down and were listening to the sermon, and they started to chant Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu. Do you know why I said Sadhu very slowly? Because in order for it to resonate, it needs to come from the heart. Also, according to ancient legends, one of his 5 ascetic friends, during the time that he was delivering this sermon, attained the first stage of awakening called Sotapanna, and this is Kondanya. The 4 Noble Truths are the doctrines of Buddhism, and in Pali it is known as Chattari Arya Satchani. There are 4 Noble Truths, like I mentioned, so I will be going over each of them very detailed. The first Noble Truth states that suffering can appear in many forms. It can either be subtle or it can be obvious. Dukkha, which means suffering, is meant that life and human existence and all of existence generally connects to suffering. There is a verse that is mentioned in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, and it states, Ayam ko sa bhikkhave majjhima patipada tathagatena apisambuddha chakku karane jnana karane upasamaya abhinyaya sambodhaya nibbanaya sampatti. The Buddha references that there are 4 major kinds of suffering, and they are birth, aging, sickness, and death. Now, in addition to the 4 major kinds of suffering, there are the 4 secondary sufferings, and they are worrying about facing harsh situations, being separated from your loved ones, not achieving one's own wishes, and encountering unwanted situations. Now, in the second Noble Truth, there is a lot to be explained about, but don't worry, I will break it down for you detail by detail. Now, it says that craving is found in all existential factors, such as passion, desire, and total attachment. Karma is often triggered through the 3 doors of action: our mind, our body, and our speech. In regards to cravings, there are 3 types of cravings you should know about. They are the pleasing senses, and this is where people indulge in sensual pleasures. There is something that you are not, means that you are constructing desire over some kind of status or something that you want in possession. And third is what you are not. It means that you want something or some kind of occurrence to stop from happening. Let's now talk about the 3 poisons, or known as the 3 unwholesome actions: greed, hatred, and ignorance. Greed in Sanskrit is known as raga, and in Pali, lobha. It means that you fixate upon a certain object and create desire. And these five hindrances state sensual desire, such as kama chanda. You may ask, what is kama chanda? It means that the blocking obstacle for all people who need their mental concentration to attain enlightenment. And there's another factor called upananda, which means to cling onto something. And that means that attachments that cause people to wander all about through their endless journey in samsara. The second unwholesome action that I will be talking about is dvesha or dosa, which means hatred. It means that you are experiencing emotions of anger, whether or not it is caused by jealousy. The antidote for hatred is actually loving kindness. Has recited in the Dhammapada, verse 5 in Yamakavagga, it states, Nahi verena verani sammantita kudachanam averene cha sammanti esidammo sanantino. This means that hatred never ceases hatred, but will only be seized by love, and this is an eternal law. The Buddha explained this verse because he meant to say that hatred will only grow in size, but love is the only powerful thing that can engulf hatred. The third unwholesome action is moha or ignorance. In Sanskrit, it's known as avidya, which means delusion. The antidote to avidya or ignorance is mindfulness, and it can help us to pay more attention to maintain our balance. Avidya or ignorance means that you're not understanding the implication of this reality of nature. This is actually embedded in the second noble truth, and this is known as the five aggregates. You may not have heard of this topic, but it's a very crucial topic in understanding what the four noble truths are about. In the five aggregates, there are five factors, and they're known as form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The first factor is rupa, which is form, and it means that it contains all six facilities, which are our eyes, which are visible, ear is for sound, nose is for odor, tongue is for tasting, body is for touching tangible things, and the mind is for our thoughts and ideas. Second one is vedana, which is feeling, and this means that it's a physical or mental sensation that is experienced through one of the six facilities. And there's something else called mana, which represents intellects or the mind. It can cause one's anger to rise, and it's all throughout until you reach the stage of arahanthood. Thirdly is perception, and it means the function to turn an indefinite sequence into a more realistically view. The fourth one is sankhara, which is mental formations, and this means that it's very similar to perception, but it's more morally dimensionized. Lastly is vijnana, which is consciousness, and we have two types of consciousness: auditory consciousness and mental consciousness. For the auditory consciousness, we have our ear has the basis and sound has the object, while in mental consciousness we have mana, which is the basis, and our ideas and thoughts has the object. The third noble truth discusses about the cessation of suffering. If one can reduce their cravings and desires, they will be one step closer to escaping samsara. Escaping samsara means that you will reach nirvana, which is a blissful state free of cravings and desire, and any other sins that can be harmful to reaching that goal. And it is the ultimate goal for all Buddhists. Arahats are beings who are enlightened and have escaped that cycle of samsara, like Princess Yasodhara and Venerable Ananda. There is a verse in the Dhammapada under stanza 1 that states, Mano Pupanga Gamma Dhamma Mano Setta Mano Maya. manasache patuttena vasativa karotiva tatonam dukkhaman veti chakkamba vahato pada. This means that the mind is the forerunner of all evil. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering will follow the wheel of the ox that pulls that wheel. The fourth noble truth explains that about the middle way, or known as the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is represented as a cessation of suffering. It mainly serves as a path to non-attachment and helps travelers to realize how to spiritually develop themselves. The Noble Eightfold Path, called Arya Atangika Magga, contains 8 rights, and they are right view, Samma Ditti, right thought, Samma Sankalpa, right speech, Samma Vacha, right action, Samma Kammanta, right livelihood, Samma Ajivaka, right effort, Samma Vayana, right mindfulness, Samma Sati, and right concentration, Samma Samadhi. These 8 rights are subcategorized into 3 categories, and they're known as wisdom, mindfulness, and morality. For example, right view and right thought are subcategorized into wisdom, which is panya. Right speech and action and livelihood are categorized into morality, which is sila. And lastly, mindfulness and concentration are categorized into mindfulness. Let me break down these 8 rights into a little more detail. So for right view, it means that you're viewing the world in a more realistic form than the world of desire that you're mostly surrounded with. Right thought helps us understand what life is about overall and helps us recognize that equality in regards to kindness and compassion. But first of all, we have to start with ourselves. Right speech helps us to abstain from speaking lies or false speech, and encourages others and us to use friendly and benevolent words. If you cannot say anything positive, it's best to obtain and avert to noble silence. Right action helps us to promote moral and honorable conduct. It means to abstain from committing wrongly of the 5 precepts, and they are: do not kill animals, do not steal or thieve anything, do not misbehave, do not lie, and do not take of intoxications. Right livelihood means that abstaining from living through a profession that may or could possibly harm someone. And in Buddhism, we strongly oppose war but highly encourage peace. For right effort, it means that you're preventing evil and unwholesome states of the mind. It rids of all evil states that may be present and develops and brings perfection of good, wholesome states. Right mindfulness means to be diligently aware, mindful, and attentive of activities in the body, which is kaya, sensations, which is vedana, activities of the mind, which is chitta, and ideas and thoughts, which is dhamma. For right concentration, it leads to the 4 stages of dhyana, which is trance, and they are: stage 1, passion, desire are discarded, and instead feelings of joy are replaced in effect. Stage 2 means that intellectual activities are suppressed and feelings of joy are retained. Stage 3 is joy disappears while mindfulness remains. And stage 4 is when sensations disappear, leaving us only with awareness. In this section, I will be talking about the stages of awakening. These are the stages that means that you're progressing towards the stages of enlightenment. The 4 stages of awakening are Sotapanna, which is stream entering, Sakadagami, once returner, Anagami, non-returner, and Arahat, fully enlightened. In Sotapanna, it means you're gaining an intuitive grasp of the Dhamma, and you're opening the Dhamma's eyes, realizing that there is impermanence. There are 6 actions that cannot be committed. They are murdering your parents, murdering an Arahat, maliciously injuring the Buddha to the point of blood, deliberately dividing the monastic community, and taking another teacher. The three fetters compromises of self-view, clinging to rites and rituals, and skeptical doubt. Self-view talks about the view of anything that is eternal to the five aggregates and is proclaimed as possessiveness. Clinging to rites and rituals discusses that eradicating one view can be practiced by notions of the middle way, and skeptical doubt means eradicating any doubts about the triple gem by gaining experience of the real Dhamma. The second stage of awakening is called Sakadagami. It means one has eradicated themselves of the three fetters. And the only way to liberate oneself from dukkha, which is suffering, is to follow and practice the middle way. It means you're cultivating the path through moral conduct, concentration, and development wisdom. And you're realizing that everything is bound to impermanence, which are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Let me explain all these three in more detail. Anicca, which is impermanence, talks about that everything is bound to decay and disintegrate. Death is subject to all living beings, and samsara blinds us of the true reality. Humans are binded by these three fetters, and the Buddha explains the gradual process of loosening the attachment to desires and of the world. Dukkha means suffering, and it means that human existence represents suffering. The ideas that are long-lasting are not satisfactory. Because of the shadow of impermanence we are stuck under, we suffer as joy and happiness, and other positive emotions fade away. Anatta means no self. It means that you're looking for a self within the five aggregates, and this causes unnecessary suffering because of possessive pronouns. Anagami, which is the third stage, states that it can be attained when all sensual desires and ill will are eradicated. And in this stage, you won't be reborn in the human realm, but in the realm of the deities or devas. And you are partially an enlightened person. Arhat is the last stage of awakening. It means that you have the highest ideal of a disciple of the Buddha. And it also means you have completed the path to enlightenment and will be attaining nirvana very soon. You have successfully eradicated of all three fetters and destroyed the relationship between attachment and ignorance. There are some mental factors to keep in mind, though. They are delusion, moha, shamelessness, aharika, fearlessness of wrongdoings, anattapa, restlessness of uttakacha, and conceit, mana. Sansara is known as the life-bound cycle of endless reincarnations through rebirths and deaths, and it's all caused by the influence of ignorance. It contains good and evil, but is defined by opposite relations. The Buddha concurred that there is no escape from birth and death, and hence impermanence and dukkha. There is ultimate bliss of peace that exists, but one must understand the existence that we are under imprisoned and how we can get out. So, what is nirvana? Nirvana is an ancient Sanskrit word which means one's liberation from samsara. It's not really referred to as a place, but merely a state of existence. It's way beyond space, time, and definition, and cannot be entered to a similar sense of entering a mere room. There are two ways to reach nirvana. The first way is to attain the last stage of awakening, which is become an arahant, or attend parinibbana through death. But only fully enlightened Buddhas can attain nirvana through that door. Hi, thank you for listening in onto my film of the Philosophies of Buddhism. I know it was a lot that I mentioned and discussed, but it was a little deeper, so I wanted to make sure every one of you understood what I was saying. And if you have any questions or any comments that you want to leave behind, please leave them in the comments and I will do my best to get to all of them. And for everyone still watching, thank you for watching, and I hope you check out my other content.